In the late 1960s, a mysterious killer emerged from the shadows of Northern California. He didn't just take lives, he played games with the public, the media, and the police. His crimes were horrific, but it was his calculated manipulation of fear that made him one of the most infamous serial killers in American history. He called himself the Zodiac. Between 1968 and 1974, the Zodiac Killer claimed responsibility for dozens of attacks and murders. Only 5 of those killings have been officially confirmed. But in his letters to the press, he claimed the real number was far higher. He sent ciphers, taunted police, and issued threats so bold and chilling that entire cities were left in a state of paranoia. Despite massive investigations, hundreds of suspects, and decades of scrutiny, the Zodiac Killer was never caught. To understand the Zodiac is to enter the mind of a killer who thrived on control and anonymity. He was a predator with a flair for performance, a murderer who wanted more than blood. He wanted to be famous. And through his cryptic writings, his public manipulation, and his carefully chosen victims, he built a terrifying legacy that continues to haunt the American psyche to this day. The story begins on December 20th, 1968. On a cold Friday night, 17-year-old David Faraday and 16-year-old Betty Lou Jensen were out on their first date. They drove to a quiet rural area off Lake Herman Road, near the small town of Benicia, California, a popular lover's lane for teenagers. At some point shortly after 10 p.m., someone approached their vehicle. What happened next was fast, brutal, and senseless. David was shot once in the head at close range. Betty Lou tried to run, but was gunned down with 5 bullets in the back. There was no robbery, no sexual assault, just 2 teenagers dead in the dark, with no apparent motive and no suspect. The investigation yielded little. There were no fingerprints, no eyewitnesses, no usable forensic evidence. The community was shocked, and the crime appeared to be isolated. But 6 months later, on July 4th, 1969, another young couple would fall victim to a similar attack, this time in nearby Vallejo. Darlene Ferrin, 22, and Michael Majot, 19, were sitting in a parked car at Blue Rock Springs Park. At around midnight, a car pulled up beside them. After a brief moment, it drove away, then returned minutes later. The driver stepped out, walked up to their car with a flashlight, and opened fire. Michael was shot in the face, neck, and chest, but miraculously survived. Darlene was hit multiple times and later died at the hospital. Around 40 minutes after the attack, the Vallejo Police Department received a call from a calm male voice. "I want to report a double murder. If you will go 1 mile east on Columbus Parkway, you will find kids in a brown car. They were shot with a 9mm Luger. I also killed those kids last year. Goodbye." This was the first time the killer made contact. The connection between the 2 crimes became clear. He was taking credit for both. But this killer wasn't just interested in violence. He wanted to be noticed. On August 1st, 1969, 3 newspapers, the San Francisco Chronicle, the San Francisco Examiner, and the Vallejo Times-Herald, each received a letter from the killer. Each envelope contained a handwritten letter full of misspellings and chilling arrogance, along with a third of a coded cipher. The letter began with a phrase that would become infamous. "This is the Zodiac speaking." The cipher, composed of strange symbols and letters, was a puzzle he demanded be printed on the front page. If it wasn't, he warned, more people would die. I like killing people, the letter read, because it is so much fun. It is more fun than killing wild game in the forest, because man is the most dangerous animal of all. He signed the letter with a symbol, a circle with a cross through it, his personal signature. The newspapers complied and published the ciphers. Amateur codebreakers Donald and Betty Harden, a school teacher couple from Salinas, cracked the 408-symbol cipher just days later. The decrypted message didn't reveal a name. Instead, it revealed something far more disturbing. The Zodiac claimed he was collecting slaves for the afterlife. He wrote, "I will not give you my name because you will try to slow down or stop my collecting of slaves for my afterlife." This wasn't just murder, it was ritual. In his mind, it was mythological. On September 27, 1969, the Zodiac struck again, this time in broad daylight. Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard, a college couple, were relaxing by Lake Berryessa in Napa County. While enjoying the peaceful afternoon by the water, they were approached by a man wearing an executioner-style black hood with a white crosshair symbol on his chest. He carried a gun and a knife. He told them he had escaped from prison and needed a car. Then he tied them up with pre-cut lengths of rope. After securing them both, he pulled out a knife and began stabbing them, 10 times for Cecilia, 6 times for Brian. He then walked to their car and wrote a message on the door in black marker. It included the dates of the previous killings, the current date, and the phrase, "by knife." Miraculously, Brian survived. Cecilia, despite regaining consciousness briefly, died 2 days later. The killer had taken his violence to a new level. This wasn't a quick ambush with a gun. It was up close, personal, prolonged. 2 weeks later, the Zodiac shifted his strategy yet again. On October 11, 1969, he murdered Paul Stein, a 29-year-old cab driver in San Francisco's upscale Presidio Heights neighborhood. Unlike his previous victims, Stein was not a couple in a secluded area. He was alone, working a routine night shift. The killer got into the cab, asked to be driven a few blocks, then shot Stein in the head. Before fleeing, the killer took Stein's wallet, keys, and tore off a piece of his blood-soaked shirt. 3 teenagers witnessed the killer fleeing the scene and called the police. A composite sketch was created. It showed a white male, late 20s to early 30s, with short brown hair and glasses. Officers even encountered a man matching that description just blocks away. But due to a radio mix-up, the officers were told to look for a black suspect and let him go. Days later, the San Francisco Chronicle received another letter from the Zodiac, this time with the bloodied piece of Paul Stein's shirt enclosed. He confirmed the kill. The police knew now with certainty that this man wasn't bluffing. Over the next year, the Zodiac continued sending letters, postcards, and more ciphers. He claimed responsibility for more murders, some of which were never confirmed. He threatened to bomb school buses, shoot children, and continued to taunt the police for their failure to catch him. One of his most famous messages was the 340-character cipher, known as the Z340. It remained unsolved for 51 years until a group of amateur codebreakers finally cracked it in 2020. The message read, in part, "I hope you are having lots of fun in trying to catch me. I am not afraid of the gas chamber because it will send me to paradise all the sooner." While investigators worked tirelessly to identify the Zodiac, They were overwhelmed with leads, suspects, and hoaxes. Hundreds of people were investigated. Dozens were considered strong suspects. The most infamous of these was Arthur Lee Allen, a convicted child molester with disturbing behaviors and circumstantial links to the crimes. He wore a Zodiac brand watch, owned the same typewriter and knives referenced in the letters, and had told friends he wanted to kill people and call himself Zodiac. But the evidence was never enough. DNA from the stamps and envelopes did not match Allen, and he was never charged. Over the decades, countless theories have emerged about the Zodiac's identity. Some believe he was a disgruntled military veteran. Others suggest he was a failed academic, obsessed with codes and symbols. A few theorists believe he may have died shortly after the Stein murder, explaining why his letters eventually stopped. Others think he lived well into old age, secretly enjoying the spectacle he created, knowing he had gotten away with it all. So who was the Zodiac Killer? A sadist? A narcissist? A genius? A madman? Perhaps he was all of these things. What we do know is that he was meticulous, strategic, and deeply disturbed. He understood the power of fear, and he weaponized it with stunning precision. He turned murder into theater, and himself into a ghost that continues to haunt American culture to this day. The Zodiac case remains open. DNA evidence is still being tested. New technology and amateur sleuths continue to dig. Perhaps one day we'll learn his true identity. Or perhaps he'll remain, as he always wanted to be, unknowable, unseen, a shadow watching from the dark. One thing is certain, the Zodiac Killer didn't just kill people. He carved his name into history, letter by letter, cipher by cipher, with every scream, every riddle, every taunt. He didn't want to be forgotten, and we haven't.